Welcome to the spoiler talk, and we're gonna get that out of the way right now. If you do not want to hear spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home, there is a spoiler-free review that basically gives absolutely nothing away and is just essentially a hype machine. And go watch that. But we gonna talk about some spoilers in here because your boy had a bunch of theories and he was right. But let's take it up from the top. First off, I'm honestly amazed, and I do mean honestly amazed, that Mysterio's plan to essentially frame Peter and also reveal his identity worked as well as it did. Because not only was my man just like exposed to the entire world, but essentially New York like turned on him really quick. And first off, for anyone in the theater who saw this movie, tell me if, number one, in that crowd, when they were crowding around both Peter and MJ, and he's kind of like trying to move through the crowd to get to MJ, and then they decide to web sling off. What was my man thinking? You remember that one guy where he flips the web and yanks to pull off, and the dude like runs up onto the hood of the car and tries to like jump and tackle Peter? And I was like, what the fuck was your plan? Like, this is a dude that you've actively seen web slinging around New York City, catching cars for fun. Did you think you were just gonna tackle him and like citizens arrest Spider-Man? Like, I was so confused as to like that dude's decision making that I almost missed out on probably the coolest web slinging sequence ever, which is just him web slinging super fast through the city. And it goes from him being like on the ground to web slinging underground to web slinging back up. And I was like, this is dope as shit. I love the fact that we've essentially, from the inception of the first Spider-Man movie, where if you go back and watch the first Spider-Man movie, you'll see that a lot of the web slinging is a little bit stiff. That's based on technology. When we got to around Andrew Garfield, his Spider-Man was more acrobatic because essentially there were better camera techniques for Spider-Man then. Absolutely beautiful movement. And I'm sorry for the people who went to go see this in 4DX, because I heard that you guys were just getting whipped around, whiplash, couldn't follow shit. I am sorry that you missed out on that cool ass sequence. But then we get the reveal. I feel as though every single person who was in this movie who had to lie and pretend that they were not in this movie deserves Oscars, because you motherfuckers are truly actors. Because Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Daredevil, what is his name? Charlie Cox, completely hoodwink a whole lot of people. Sure, we had like a couple leaks and pictures, but you can deep fake shit these days. But having them be in the movie, so good. Having them be in the movie with their villains, so good. Seeing Charlie Cox as Daredevil, sitting down, working with Peter, and trying to figure out like how exactly Peter was going to beat the case and what the fuck was going on. So good. And let me tell you something, when the brick comes through the window, I love the fact that they both react to it essentially at the exact same time. And the only reason why Charlie Cox caught it was because he was closer to it, which is the brick comes through the window and he's just like, whap. Well, you can't see that hand. He's like, whap, and he just catches it. But then Peter's hand is like right in front of his because he was going to catch it too because of his spider sense. Dope as shit. I also love the fact that like Peter wants to ask him a question and then he instantly changes the subject to Happy so that they stop talking to him about what he just did. Because Peter's like, how'd you do that? He's like, I can understand me doing that, but how'd you? And he was just like, I'm a really good lawyer. Then he drops it, like he tosses it over to Peter and he instantly goes to Happy and he's like, but you need to get like your own lawyer because shit's about to get super crazy for you. And it truly did get super crazy. I also like the fact that we got a little bit more insight into Happy, which is essentially, I always wondered what happened to Tony's little arm robot. And it's great to see that, oh my god, now that I think about it, that arm robot totally got fucking destroyed, didn't he? He survived so much. He survived Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2. He survived being blown up and sent to the bottom of the ocean. He survived Infinity War. He was chilling at the house with Morgan in Endgame. Like, he ended up being donated to Happy, and he's at Happy's house, and he gets blown to pieces by Electro. That's fucked up. Rest in peace. That arm robot was a true G. But they go to Happy's place, and he has like a fabricator that has an arc reactor hooked up to it. I'm just like, holy shit. Happy has like a ton of Stark tech just lying around, which really feeds into what Matt was telling him about getting a lawyer. Because if Happy just has Stark tech all over the place, anybody can just like show up at your house and take your shit, which is essentially what ends up happening later on. But I love the fact that there are repercussions for the characters and the people around the character when his identity gets revealed. Because when it comes to a child hero, if you're an adult and you're aware of the fact that your kid is essentially a hero, and you will more or less condone your kid going out there to be Spider-Man like May does, it's child endangerment, which is what the officer essentially said. It's like, if you knew he was Spider-Man and you knew he was going around doing this as a kid at 16 years old, then you basically were endangering a child, and she could go to jail for that. And I actually like the interjection of a little bit of realism there, because it's like, yeah, if your kid was a superhero and you allowed your kid to basically go out and do superhero shit, basically you're endangering the child, because the child's fighting people that are not only attempting to kill the kid, but he's also fighting people that are essentially destroying shit. Like, now that I know that's your identity, you remember when you blew up my apartment building and wrecked my car like 2 weeks ago? I know exactly who to send the bill to. So I like the fact that the officer more or less approached everyone the way in which made sense. Which is, for MJ, he was like, are you really gonna like mess up your life? It's like, you really struggled with the best grades to get into MIT, and because of this, you're probably not gonna get into any of your schools. With Ned, he played at Ned's vanity about being Spider-Man's guy in the chair, which Ned ends up spilling the beans because he thinks it's super hype to help out a superhero, only to discover that because like superheroes frequently break the law, when it comes time for the law to bring down the hammer, the people in the chair also get hit by the hammer. For May, it's child endangerment, and then for Peter, it's essentially recklessness, destruction, possible multiple deaths due to Mysterio's freaking plans over in Europe. Like, not only do you have issues with European police that probably also want to arrest Peter, and I don't know who he is, so there's like a level of extradition there as well. I also like the fact that he brings up Nick Fury. He's like, yo, just call Nick Fury, he was with me in Europe, to which the officer essentially responds, he's like, Nick Fury's been off planet for like the last year. Which kind of has to really suck for Peter, because now it's like, well shit, was Mysterio also faking the Nick Fury that I was interacting with? No, because I definitely encountered a Fury after I beat Mysterio. What the fuck is going on there? But I'm annoyed that they kind of left it there, because let's be honest, if Peter got in trouble to this extent, Nick Fury would have stepped in, or Talos would have stepped in. Someone would have stepped in to be like, yeah, we need to squash all this shit, because Spider-Man definitely didn't get up to any of this. So it's kind of weird that essentially Peter was kind of left out, to dry, where he had to essentially handle all the problems from his European trip on his own. So of course, with all this shit piling up on him, he goes to Doctor Strange. He's like, hey, can you just like do a time thing and head back in time and like prevent me from doing stupid shit? And Strange is like, yo, did you forget? No time stone? How the hell am I supposed to do that? Also, side note, Wong is Sorcerer Supreme. I like the fact that they address it. It makes sense, and they moved on from it. Because essentially for Wong, he was like, oh, I only ended up in this job by accident because the person who's supposed to be Sorcerer Supreme got dusted. To which Strange is like, I got turned to dust by Thanos, and in 5 years without a Sorcerer Supreme, they elected Wong as essentially the Sorcerer Supreme. Because Wong is the number 2 sorcerer in Kamatage since Mordo left. We're going to get to him later. Definitely going to get to him. So Wong is Sorcerer Supreme, which I like the fact that the Marvel movies still change things from the trailers. Because if you remember when the Infinity War trailer came out, you had like that really cool running animation scene where they're running through the jungle, and it's like Black Panther and Thor. He has both eyes, no lightning. And like the Hulk is running with them, and like Bucky's running with them. But then when the actual movie came out, none of that was in the movie. Like Hulk he didn't want to come out, so it was basically the Hulkbuster armor. So we never got to see Hulk, or it basically was a fake out where we thought something was going to happen, and they put fake scenes in the trailer to throw us off their scent. Essentially the same thing happened here, where in the No Way Home trailer, Strange talks to Wong about casting the spell, and Wong is like, I forbid you from casting the spell, don't do it, and he leaves. Something about like a vacation. In this one, Wong is like, yo, if you cast a spell, I'm not going to be here when you cast it because I have other things to take care of, and he just leaves. So Strange casts the spell anyway. Now here's the thing, Strange, we've been here before. Sometimes it's best to explain something before you do it. Which is, I feel as though if he had told Peter, like, hey, there's this spell I can cast. The only problem is when I cast it, everyone will forget you're Spider-Man. Do you have anyone that you would like to remember that you're Spider-Man? That way, before we even get to anything, Peter can write like 15 names on a list, hand it to Strange. Strange is like, okay, these 15 people will remember that you're Spider-Man. Zoop, done. Instead, Strange just starts casting the spell, and Peter is like, just word diarrhea of all the different people that he doesn't want to forget who he is. The spell fucks up, and Strange contains it, but it's too late. We've got people coming in now. Let's talk about a rogues gallery, because I think everyone did a fantastic job. Even the dude who plays Flint Marko, Sandman, even he did a great job, because at least he was the conflicted character, but you understood exactly where his character was coming from. So first off, the two standout stars for me, William Dafoe's Goblin and Jamie Foxx's Electro. What beautiful writing for both of those fucking characters. Absolutely fantastic. Not only did we get the manic and insane Goblin persona, but we also got like this weak and vulnerable Norman Osborn persona, where Norman loses track of time when the Goblin takes over, but the Goblin is always watching what Norman does. Absolutely fantastic. William Dafoe is a fucking G, and I'm gonna dedicate a video just talking to like how much of a G William Dafoe is. Jamie Foxx, what a fucking glow up! What a glow up from Amazing Spider-Man 2. No, like when he first showed up, I thought it was another fake out. I was like, okay, so you showed us like regular Jamie Foxx, but here he is and he's blue again. But when he gains enough basically energy, he gets grounded by Sandman. He gets his body back. What a glow up. No stupid comb over, no ridiculously giant like gap tooth, no like weird speaking habits, none of that. All of that is gone. It is just nothing but quips, and his quips are great. I love the fact that when he first shows up in front of everyone, he's naked, because of course he was just pure energy. And they're holding a conversation about what exactly is going on and where exactly they are. And he makes a reference. He's like, whoa, this is definitely a different universe, because I feel an energy in this universe that I've never felt before. And I kind of like that. And as the conversation goes on, he was like, okay, y'all both ain't just gonna act like I'm not standing in front of you butt ass naked. And everyone in the theater started laughing because there was legit a scientific discussion happening between Peter and Jamie Foxx's character before he brought that to like everybody's attention and to get him clothes. But another one of my theories, which was absolutely paid off, the black and gold suit. So I thought the black and gold suit was essentially something that Doctor Strange created for him, and it had the ability to send people back. I was half right. It's basically the basic Spider-Man suit flipped inside out because he got paint on, well, someone threw paint at him and it got paint on the suit. But Strange augmented it to have like a gauntlet that he could fire a special type of magic whip, and then the magic whip would send the multiversal invader, the multiversal villain, to a prison cell underneath the Sanctum Sanctorum. So I was half right in regards to that theory, but that black and gold suit looks super dope. Even though it was like a inside out suit, I still think it looked like super crazy. Now, one of the weaker villains is definitely Flint Marco. Flint Marco? Filzo, that's his name. Sandman, we're just gonna call him Sandman from here on in. They didn't really give him a lot to work with, and that's fine because he's never really been like a main villain. The two villains that I definitely feel got the least amount of shine are Kirk Connor's the Lizard and Flint Marco's Sandman. They more or less existed as the heavy hitters. There wasn't really a lot of talking for their characters. It was just show up, fight, fuck some shit up, keep it moving from there. Now, right in the middle of that beautiful sandwich is Dr. Otto Octavius. And when he first showed up, that dude is a powerhouse. I'm not gonna fake. I forgot just how diesel the villains were in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movie. Because when you sit down and you think about it, Tom Holland's first villain was Vulture and a bunch of people with like guns. His second villain was Mysterio, and that was all about illusions, but he was just a normal dude in a suit. Like, Goblin, probably on the same strength tier as Spider-Man. Otto Octavius, those arms also put him on the same strength tier as Spider-Man, because both of those villains alone gave Peter the business. When Otto shows up on that bridge and he's ripping the bridge to shreds and he's lobbing cars and he's picking up giant concrete cinder tubes and he's smacking the shit out of Peter, I was like, yo, you're dealing with some physical villains that I don't think you fought since like Endgame. And then when Goblin shows up and he's doing his crazy shit, I'm like, yeah, you've never fought villains like this before. And as he captures each and every one of them and sends them basically back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, the conversation that he essentially has where he finds out about them and then the villains learn basically about themselves is dope as hell. Because when he brings back Norman, that is such a cool scene where Norman's in the alleyway, and it harkens back to Spider-Man 1 where when he wants to talk to his Goblin persona, he looks at the mask and he can hear him, and then he smashes the mask and runs away, but then you hear laughing and you're like, the Goblin's up to something. So of course Norman goes and finds Aunt May because she's related to Peter Parker, and she's like, yo, we can't just turn him away. Like, the point of being Spider-Man is to help people, and you don't not help someone because they're your villain, which completely instantly annoyed me because it was essentially the exact same thing that happened in Flash Armageddon in the last episode, and I was like, let's not do this. But you're Spider-Man, so this absolutely makes sense. Everybody's back at the Sanctum. He walks in with Norman, and I love the fact that there was like a realization that people were essentially snatched out of time between all of the villains, where the first person to say something is Otto Octavius, where Octavius is like, you're supposed to be dead, and Norman's like, huh? And Octavius basically gives like the rundown. He was like, Norman Osborn killed by his glider, and when Octavius stops, Sandman is like, technically both of y'all are supposed to be dead. He got killed by his own glider, and then you killed yourself, destroying your own machine. To which then the characters remembered their deaths. Where for Otto, he was like, no, I would never, I would, why would I destroy my machine? And then you see Goblin remember his death as well, and he starts kind of freaking out. But then it jumps over to Kurt Connors and Electro, where Electro was like, oh well shit, y'all died? And Kurt Connors is like, yeah, and you died too. And he's like, what? I didn't die. He was like, man, I was fighting Spider-Man and I was giving him the work. And he was like, and then I was absorbing so much energy that I started turning into pure energy. And then the realization he was like, shit, I killed myself. And I was like, yo, this is great. Like, I love the fact that the villains realize the predicament that they're in, that Peter really didn't have to explain anything, because all the villains that are here, except for Flint Marko, who's just like a regular street criminal, are great scientists that would be able to figure out exactly what the fuck is going on pretty easily. Of course, Strange shows up with the box, and he's like, oh, time to send everybody back so they can die in their universe. And Peter has essentially his moral dilemma, where he's like, I don't want to send these people back to die, I want to try and save them. Strange is like, no, we send them back, otherwise, the multiverse gets fucked up. And they have their fight. Let me tell you something. That fight is so fucking dope. That fight is dope as hell. Like, when they go outside, and I'm going to talk about how it first begins. So when Peter runs outside and Strange does the circles, and he captures him, and he knocks his spirit out of his body, and Peter's like, what the fuck is going on? Am I dead? And Strange is like, no, I just knocked your spirit, I just knocked your astral form out of your body. I love the fact that on a subconscious level, his spider sense is still active. And I think the artist did a beautiful job showing that, by showing that he had lightning bolts all around his head for a comic book accurate spider sense, where when Strange kept trying to reach for the box, his body would instantly move the box away from where Strange was. And Strange was like, I don't understand what the hell is going on here, because this has never happened before, which is true. He's never fought Peter, and he isn't aware of essentially his spider sense. And I love the detail of the lightning bolts on his head, because like I was tapping a friend of mine, I was like, yo, look at his head, there's like lightning bolts up there, that shit is dope as fuck. And we were both completely geeking out. And of course he gets back into his body, and they go into the mirror dimension. Now the mirror dimension fight is cool as hell, because for Strange, he's a master of the mirror dimension. It's his best spell. It's one of the best locations he can take somebody in order to fight them. But I love the fact that Peter realizes, from a scientific standpoint, what the mirror dimension is. It's basically geometry and division, and he uses that against Strange to essentially trap him there. Beautiful. He didn't beat Strange through some bullshit power. He didn't suddenly discover that he was magic. No, he countered Strange in a magical dimension using science. He used his head, which is something that I can honestly say you never see in Marvel Comics when it comes to heroes. He looked around, realized what was going on. He was like, oh, it's basic division, and it's also geometry. He's like, you're great at geometry. And he started doing the numbers in his head, and he started webbing things together and putting things together, and then he trapped Strange. And I was like, absolutely glorious. 100% beautiful. I fucking love it. That's great. He gets back, he goes to the villains, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna get you guys out of here, and I'm gonna try and save you guys and then send you back. This is the start of good deeds will be punished. Like there's a saying that no good deed goes unpunished. This is a good deed leads to you being punished. Because at that point in time I was like, I don't know, like this feels like a really bad decision. But he sticks to it. He takes them away. He starts working with the fabricator at Happy's place to create tech to essentially turn all of these guys normal so that they can go back to their worlds and just live normal lives. And here is my favorite scene in the movie. It's going to be followed by my favorite fight scene in the movie. But he's working at Happy's basically to bring everybody back. and he creates the neural inhibitor again for Doc Ock. He puts it on, the tentacles are no longer speaking to him, making him crazy, he goes back to normal. And I love the fact that the movie takes the time to show that for a lot of these villains, they're really only this way because of their powers. That there really are decent people. When you take away the tech scrambling Doc Ock's head, he's a loving husband, he's a friendly scientist. When you take away the serum that's made Norman insane, thinking he has dual personality syndrome, he's a happy, loving father and a normal scientist. When you take away Electric's powers and the fact that he always needs to drain energy and feed, he's just a chill dude. Flint Marko, he's just a guy who wants to hug his daughter and not be basically what the fuck he is. Kurt Connors, his mind is completely scrambled and he's insane, thinking he needs to turn everybody into a lizard because of his lizard persona. All of these villains are essentially suffering from mental issues. And I love the fact that Peter realizes this and he tries to work with them to get them help so that they don't get killed in their universe, which is something that the older Spider-Man movies never really did a good job dealing with, which is William Dafoe's Goblin suffers from mental issues, he gets killed. Dr. Octavius suffers from a mental issue, he dies. Like every single person in the Spider-Man movies before this who suffer from mental issues end up dead, or they end up in like an institution that's just going to torture them and exploit them for their powers. Peter's the only one actually our Peter is the only one actually trying to help these people, and it's great. It's dope as fuck. I absolutely love it. But here's my favorite scene, and the scene is dope as hell because he's sitting in the fabricator room and he's working on a machine to help someone, and all of a sudden the sound's just gone. Everyone's voice is muffled, and all you hear is a ringing, and it's his spider sense. And it is going haywire. Absolutely insane. And it's my favorite scene ever because when he gets up, he just instantly walks into the next room. And all the villains are in the room. And he's standing in the middle of the room and he's looking at each and every one of them one by one. And he can't figure out who's the threat. Where is it coming from? And he basically does what he did fighting Mysterio in Far From Home. Takes a deep breath and he closes his eyes, and then it's thwick. And when it pans to who it thwicked to, he thwicked Green Goblin on the wall and stopped him. And that's when he realized that it wasn't Norman in control, it was the Goblin in control. And I absolutely love it because only the Green Goblin can cause a Spider-Man spider sense to go through the fucking roof and have that man shook to the point where his spider sense is like, nothing matters. What you're working on doesn't matter. What's going on? Why did it suddenly get bright? Nothing matters. What you're working on doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Nothing matters whatsoever. There's something wrong. And you need to figure out what is wrong, because if you don't, it's going to kill you. And I absolutely love it. And then Mayhem just pandemonium. And here's why I fucking love William Dafoe's Goblin. Because his Goblin gives a speech about gods not needing to be fixed in regards to essentially all of the villains and their powers. And that speech is dope as hell. Because instantly it goes from the villains feeling as though Peter's going to be able to help them to basically their psychosis activating and them going, yeah, I'm fucking perfect the way I am. Why the hell would I need you to help me? I can drain power and become an electric god. And pandemonium breaks loose. Electro blows up half the apartment. Sandman goes outside, starts wrecking shit. Doc Ock tries to help, gets blasted out and has to retreat and run away. Peter and Goblin decide to start fighting, and what a one-sided ass whooping. The entire time this fight was going down, I was like, yo, Peter, you fought some villains. I'm not gonna fake, but I don't think you're ready for a main Spider-Man villain, because Goblin gave that man an ass whooping. Like, I mean, he choke slammed him through one floor, picked him up, power bombed him through like 5 floors. Peter had to like retreat, but before he retreated, there's like a scene where he jumps up on a goblin and he's just whack, whack, and he's just throwing haymakers. And as he's punching him, like Goblin's face is just bigger into like a bigger and bigger grin, and he starts doing like that William Dafoe Goblin laugh. And I was like, only William Dafoe could do that goofy ass face and scare the shit out of me. Because the second Peter saw that face, my man jumped out that fucking window and was dangling on the side of that building like, good God. What is that man made out of? And of course, Kurt Connors, the lizard, comes up the fucking building and starts beating the shit out of Peter. And does, in my opinion, the most disrespectful thing ever. First off, lizard, you're not even from Goblin's universe. My man saw the ass whooping that Peter just got from Goblin and threw my man Peter back through the window to Norman so that Norman could powerbomb him from like the 4th floor to the lobby. And I was like, this is absolutely disrespectful. Across the board, 100%. You didn't have to throw me to that man. Not at all. Not at all. You didn't have to throw me to that man. At all. You could have hopped through and started whooping my ass. No, you threw me back to the guy who was beating my ass so he could continue the ass whooping that I just thought that I escaped. You a piece of shit. I was like, Lizard ain't shit. 100% across the board, Lizard is not shit. And then of course it goes from like an action scene to probably like the most depressing shit ever. Which is, we get to the lobby, Aunt May gets down to the lobby, Goblin calls in the glider, and May gets hit. And then he throws in a goblin bomb and blows up the lobby. And at first I was like, oh, she made it. She's gonna be okay. And then Peter saw all the blood and they have a heart-to-heart. And she basically tells him that, like, you know, no matter what, you always try and help people. And then she dies. And I was like, why you do this? Because as a person who's watched Spider-Man movies for like the last 20 years and consumed Spider-Man content, Peter Parker is one of the most tragic MCU characters ever, because he's always losing something. He either loses friends, he loses family, he loses loved ones, like he always loses something. And for the movies, he always does a big loss in the first movie. But even for, let's say, Gwen Stacy, we knew her fate getting killed by Goblin, so it kind of softened the blow when her death came, even though that's still one of the most depressing scenes ever. But for May, having May essentially be, she was always there. From Civil War to Homecoming to Far From Home to No Way Home, May was always like this constant positive force in Peter's life. And then just having her essentially get killed because he was trying to help people against the judgment of essentially Stephen Strange and a few other people. It's like, for Peter, I absolutely understand where he was coming from, where his anger later on was coming from, because he put his neck out to save these people, and they essentially betrayed him and led to the death of his aunt. And it was sad. Like, it really fucked me up. But then, we jumped into hype. Because it instantly cuts back over to Ned and MJ. And Ned has on the sling ring, and he's like, you know, doing random shit in the house, and MJ starts seeing sparks. So she's like, oh, you could open up a portal to Peter. Opens up a portal, out pops Andrew Garfield, and I was like, yes, welcome back to the MCU, goddammit, because the spoilers said that you was in this movie, and I'm hyper shit that you're back here, and look at you, looking good in the Spider-Man suit. And I love the interaction between them and Andrew Garfield, because he's definitely the more goofy Peter Parker, because they're like, who are you? He's Peter Parker. He's like, prove it. And he's like, what the hell am I supposed to do to prove that I'm Spider-Man? So like, he jumps and he's hanging from the ceiling by like his fingertips. And MJ has the audacity to be like, okay, now crawl over there and prove that you're actually. He was like, I'm not gonna crawl. And I really felt as though that could be pulled straight from the comic books, where Peter would say something along the lines of like, that's kind of demeaning. or being spider insensitive or something along those lines. Because I was like, you want the man to crawl on the ceiling to prove that he's Spider-Man? And then he ends up having to anyway to get the cobwebs out of the corner. And I was like, come on, don't do that to that man. So Ned tries again. He's like, okay, we'll open up a portal, our Peter. Opens up a portal, out walks fucking Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And if the crowd went wild for Andrew, but the crowd went really wild for Tobey. And I understood the reason why is because for a lot of people, when I looked around in the crowd, a lot of them were like in my age group, and that was our Spider-Man showing up again. And I love the fact that he, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man makes the joke along the lines of Tobey Maguire's Peter looks like a youth pastor, which I was like, you know what? To be fair, he always did dress like one in the original Spider-Man trilogy. So this absolutely 100% across the board makes sense. Yes, the man does look like a youth pastor. But the reason why they're both there, I really liked. Because of the trauma that Tom Holland Spider-Man received. His spider sense was essentially just losing its mind. And because his spider sense was losing its mind, their spider sense essentially picked up on his distress, and they couldn't figure out where exactly he was, but they knew that they had to find him because essentially like they could feel his pain. And that was like a level and dimension of the spider sense that you never really got until Spider-Verse, where you realize that the Spider-Men are all connected on like this sub frequency, where like if one of their spider senses triggered, even if the others weren't in the vicinity, in a way they would detect that Spider-Man was in trouble, or they could detect that Spider-Man had died. So I like the fact that they introduced the fact that on a emotional level, when they're emotionally distressed or they're angry or pissed off, the other Spider-Men through their spider senses can feel that in some way, shape, or form. That's dope as hell. And I hope that if we get a Spider-Verse movie down the line, they explore that more, because I'd love to see more of that when they introduce other Spider-Men like Miles, Gwen, Kane, Ben Reilly, all those other clone variants out there. I think that would be a really cool moment. Now we moved on from there, and they go and they find Peter, and he's on the roof and he's having like an emotional breakdown, and his friends show up. They try to console him, but then he detects that there are people on the roof. There are a few beautiful shots in my opinion in this movie. One of the dopest shots is the shadow silhouette of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man on the roof building. I need a poster. I need a metallic poster. I'd put it right here. It's gonna go right here. It's gonna go right here. Like right here is gonna be the metallic poster of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man on top of the high school roof. Then right here is gonna be the metallic poster for when all three of them are web slinging and they land on top of the Statue of Liberty. Give me that. Like who I need to talk to? Display. Go ahead and send me an email. I'll be I'll do ads. I'll do ads if you guys just supply me with like multiple shots from the movie in display fashion. Please. So essentially they introduce themselves, and I think it's dope as hell that they all essentially have quips, but all of their personalities are different. And you kind of get to see that when they go downstairs and they start basically doing science shit in order to help save the villains. Now, I'm gonna talk about a dark scene, and it's really a dark scene in regards to Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and I'm gonna dedicate a video to that, which is when he says that, you know, he got angry and he got bitter and he stopped pulling his punches. I'm gonna reference that pulling the punches thing later on during Tom Holland's fight against Goblin, because that shows what a Spider-Man who does not pull his punches looks like. But when they're in the lab, basically working on the tech to neutralize the villains and turn them back to normal, I love the fact that all of them essentially started working on things that they're best at. Tom Holland, Spider-Man, he's best at making tech. Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, also great at making tech. Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, he's great at doing tech, but he excels at mixing chemicals to create compounds. All of them go to work creating things to neutralize the villains. But while they're doing that, Ned's walking around asking questions. He's like, oh, what happened to your best friend? And he's like, oh, my best friend became a villain, and then he died in my arms. And then he looks over at Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man. He's like, well, what happened to your best friend? He's like, my best friend's villain. He kind of died in my arms. And then he walks over to Tom Holland, and he's like, I want to let you know, I will never turn into a supervillain and attempt to kill you. And Tom Holland has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. He just turns and he walks away. But it's the head nod from Andrew Garfield, like, good job, man. Yeah, don't become that supervillain. And I was like, bruh, what is going on right now? And I also love the banter about the organic webs, which is Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, start talking about web fluid. And he's like, yeah, you know, I had to create my web cartridges in order to do my whatchamacallit. And Tobey Maguire Spider-Man's like, huh? He's like, what are you guys talking about? And he was like, you know, web cartridges so that you can shoot webs. And he just goes, what? And the look of disgust on Andrew Garfield's face when the organic web shoots out was pure gold. Because he was like, what the fuck was that? And he was like, you're telling me you guys can't do this? What? And they're like, no, we can't do that. He was like, does that stuff come out of you? Which leads to a funnier conversation later on when they go to the Statue of Liberty, which is, they were like, he was like, hey, so, you know, I'm just wondering, like, how does your body, like, produce that? Does it, like, automatically produce that? Like, what's going on internally for you to produce that? And then Tom Holland asked the question that Andrew Garfield was trying to, like, ease his way towards. He was like, basically, we're trying to figure out, is that the only location that webs come out of? And he was like, yes, that is the only location they come out of. To which Andrew Garfield was like, yo, you ever get, like, web blocked or, like, backed up? And he was like, that did happen once before, but it was a mental, emotional thing. And Andrew Garfield was like, yeah, I've been there before. And I was like, yeah, I bet you have been there before with all the emotional bullshit that you've been through. Of course, they call to the villains. The villains show up. Beautiful fucking throwdown. What a beautiful throwdown. If you can't tell, I still have, like, low-key a cold. There's going to be, like, some snifflings here and there. I apologize. Beautiful throwdown. Now, because they've never worked together on a team, they're kind of clashing with each other until, essentially, Tom Holland Spider-Man's like, look, I'm Spider-Man 1, you're Spider-Man 2, you're Spider-Man 3. We don't work together as a team. However, this is what we're going to do. We're all going to attack the same target, and we're just basically going to work together. And they're like, yes. Awesome ass sequence as they just zip around the Statue of Liberty, fighting the shit out of the villains and basically curing them one by one. Otto comes back. He tricks Electro, gets the thing off of him, turns him back to normal. I love the quips between the villains and their universe's Spider-Man. When their Spider-Man shows up, Otto Octavius is like, Peter Parker, brilliant but lazy. I was like, oh, nostalgia. Jamie Foxx's Electro definitely has, like, the most fucked up quips, because when Andrew Garfield swings up, he's like, hey, Max, what's going on, my buddy? And Jamie Foxx is like, oh, I'm in a new universe now. I met new Spider-Man. Your Spider-Man ain't shit. I was like, wow. You really gonna take a shot at that man because he don't have, like, a nanite suit? That's fucked up. Like, that's really messed up. It's not his fault that he doesn't know magic. Like, come on, man. Not like this, Max. You don't gotta attack my boy like this. And now we get to the other thing, which is your boy was right for the third time. Because I did make a video and I was like, yo, I'm telling you right now, looking at the hand, it looks like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man is the one who saves MJ. And sure enough, Tom Holland jumps down, Goblin swoops in, knocks him in the side to keep him from catching MJ. Andrew Garfield Spider-Man zips forward, catches her, and lands on the floor. And there was a moment where like I really wanted to tear up because it was emotional as shit. Because like he looks at her and you could almost tell that like he didn't see MJ. What he saw in his arms was Gwen. And then she was like, "Are you okay? Do you need a hug?" And he looks at her and he's like, No. You know, I'm fine. I'm fine." And it really goes back to a conversation that all of the Spider-Men had at the high school, where Peter Parker was like, "This your girlfriend?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm MJ." And Peter, like, you know, like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was like, he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I got an MJ in my universe too." And he was like, "What about you?" And he turns to Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and he's like, "Nah, man, like I had someone, but you know, she died." And Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was basically like, "Yo, like I understand, like it's painful when you lose people, but I'm telling you, like there's someone waiting for you in your universe." And he's basically talking about an MJ, where he's like, you know, the way in which it typically breaks down, there's a Peter Parker in the universe, there's definitely a Mary Jane Watson or MJ something in that universe that's basically your other half. And I like that he put that bug in Andrew Garfield's head, because now that I feel as though he saved MJ, I feel as though like there's a little bit of closure for him where his character can like start living again when he gets back to his universe. Oh, and then the Goblin arrives and everything goes to absolute hell because you completely forget just like how chaotic the Goblin actually is. And everyone gets separated and it's a fight between Tom Holland and the Green Goblin, and he is not pulling his punches, which earlier on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was like, "Oh, I stopped pulling my punches when I was fighting villains." And Tom Holland throws like this haymaker that hits the ground and leaves this gigantic dent in the metal shield that they put up on the Statue of Liberty. And I remember everyone in the theater was like, "Yo, what the fuck?" Yeah, that's a Spider-Man who does not pull his punches. They look like that. We're talking about a Spider-Man who didn't pull his punches against the Hulk one time and sent the Hulk into like upper orbit. He's insanely strong. He just always holds back. And I love the fact that during the second fight, Tom Holland was not holding back. He was hitting the Goblin with the force of God. Because the Goblin was like, "Hey, hold on, bruh. Like, you wasn't throwing these punches before, homeboy. Like, Peter, please. Like, what's going on here?" And he knocks him to the ground and he picks up the glider. And I really feel as though he had remembered Otto Octavius telling him earlier that Norman got impaled by his own glider. And he picked the glider up to basically kill him the way in which he died originally. And he was about to just yeet. And it's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man who lands in front of him and he catches the glider and he stops it. And I was like, yeah, he didn't have to say anything. Because I feel as though if he had said something, it would have fucked up the scene. But he doesn't say anything at all. He just catches the glider and he just looks at him. And it's like an older brother talking to like a younger brother. And it's like, "Yo, I've been here before. It doesn't help. You're not going to gain anything from this." And he puts down the glider. And of course, like, I don't know why it is, but for whatever reason, Green Goblin always has like a one-up on his universe's Spider-Man, where Tobey Maguire's Spider-Sense just does not activate to catch that man. Because I have no idea how his Spider-Sense wasn't like, "Oh, he's about to stab me in the back." And he didn't just like boot Norman in the face. Norman stabs him. And Andrew Garfield finds the device to turn him back to normal, throws it over to Peter, injects him, Norman goes back to normal. And then this also was like a super sad scene, because Norman goes back to normal and he looks up and he sees, first he looks down and he sees his Peter Parker, and he looks up and he sees basically Tom Holland Peter Parker, and he's like, "I don't remember anything. What did I do?" And I'm like, you weren't even in control, bruh. Like, Goblin was just like doing whatever the fuck he wanted. Like, you did so much fucked up shit and you don't even know, and it's not even your fault, and that's messed up. And he looked so defeated and dejected. But I love the conversation that ends up happening like between the three of them, where it's basically like all of them had the same sentiment, which was like, "Oh, when we were younger, like we really wish that we had brothers." and like it's super cool to be here and everything that's going on. But then like the sky starts ripping open and people start coming through. And I'm probably gonna do like another video on like all the silhouettes for the people that are coming through, because there are a lot of call outs, not only from other projects that were teased before and other villains that were teased for other Spider-Man movies, but also classic villains from the comic books. Dope as shit. Absolutely loved it. It looked like pandemonium was about to come right on through. And there's definitely like a super big bad that pushed his way to the front to look down to see what the hell was going on. And I'm like, if you are who I think you are, sir, we are definitely getting a Spider-Verse movie. But of course, Peter goes up to the top. He's talking to Strange. Strange is like, they're coming through. The only way to stop the spell is to make everybody basically forget who Peter Parker is. And he basically tells them to, you know, cast a spell. He heads down. He tells Ned and MJ what's about to happen. They have like the emotional scene. Oh, God. Like, imagine like you have like a best friend and a girlfriend that you've been with like a really long time and you care about them. And the only way in order to save their lives is to basically like erase their memory so they don't even remember you exist. And it's like everybody brought emotion. Like Ned had the emotion, MJ had the emotion, Tom Holland had the emotion, and he goes back up to Strange. Strange had the emotion. I was like, everybody up here is crying, and he casts the spell, and everyone forgets that essentially Tom Holland like is Spider-Man. Now there are a lot of like inconsistencies that I'm definitely gonna have to talk about in another video too, which is exactly how much and how effective the spell is. Like, does it affect people from other multiverses, or is it only localized to people on Earth, or is it localized to people throughout like the universe? What's the range of this spell? Like, if Tom Holland ran into Star-Lord, would Star-Lord be like, hey, that Spider guy that we fought like that one time? Or like when he met Spider-Lord, Spider-Lord's like, who the hell are you? I remember fighting with you. Like, where the hell did you come from? Now, of course, we flash forward later, and Peter's basically like living a life incognito. Nobody remembers who he is. Happy doesn't know who he is. He goes to see MJ and Ned at the coffee shop. She doesn't remember him. There's a brief moment where he goes to leave and she kind of looks at him like a little bit misty-eyed, like, I should know this dude, but I don't. He decides that he's not going to interfere in their lives. He's just going to let them like go on, live their lives, be happy, so that basically he can focus on Spider-Man. I'm not going to fake. I thought the movie was going to throw one last Easter egg at us by having Mr. Ditchovich like you give me rent. I really thought he was going to show up like when Peter walks into like his new apartment and he goes to basically like move all his stuff in, and you hear the landlord, he's like, rent's due on the 1st. Like, I really thought it was going to be Mr. Ditchovich and he was going to be like, rent? Like don't worry, on the 1st, you give me rent. But it didn't happen. It didn't bring my boy back. I was extremely upset. I was very, very sad that it wasn't Mr. Ditchovich. But the ending. Now, for whatever reason, I'm seeing arguments from both sides in regards to the ending of the movie, which is essentially Peter gets well, I wouldn't even say that. He no longer has Stark Tech. All of his Stark Tech is gone. He no longer uses his Stark Tech. We see that he has a sewing machine. He's essentially made his own Spider-Man suit, which looks clean. That Spider-Man suit looks so comic book accurate. Bright ass fucking colors, red and blue. I was like, this is straight out the comic books, 100%. This Spider-Man suit is fire, and I cannot wait until we get to see that in whatever the next Spider-Man movie is in live action. And one of the angry remarks that I was seeing from people was essentially Peter being basically Iron Lad or Spider Lad, where everything that he's gained was essentially from Tony Stark. He didn't build anything himself. And now that he's essentially Spider-Man from the comic books, where he's living off on his own, he's lost basically the inspirational parent who gives him the quote, good lord, how did I forget the Spider-Man quote? With great power comes great responsibility. he's basically like Spider-Man from the comics, and he has the comic book accurate suit that he made himself. Now people are complaining, they're like, this Spider-Man isn't the Spider-Man from the MCU, what happened here? Can't please anyone, and to be quite honest, we shouldn't attempt to please you, and Marvel shouldn't attempt to please you, because you're always going to find something to complain about, and you are going to be okay. The new suit looks like absolute fucking fire, and for whatever reason, I'm remembering the after credit scene, but I'm not remembering the post credit scene. Bruh, we've made it like this super far without me. Venom, I forgot about the whole Venom thing. So the Venom thing's weird because we were teased that Eddie was going to be in the movie at the end of Venom 2. He was in the after credit scene. He's talking to a bartender, and the bartender's explaining basically everything that's going on in this universe. He's like, you know, there's a billionaire who can fly, there's a guy called the Hulk, a purple dude with stones showed up and wiped out half the universe, and when Strange's spell goes off and everybody goes back to their home universe, Eddie gets sent back. And when he gets sent back, it pans down to the table, and we see that there's a piece of the symbiote left, essentially on the bar in Tijuana, or wherever the hell in Mexico they are. Now, here's the thing. The symbiote, I don't believe the symbiote's going to be an offspring. I think the symbiote essentially is Venom, or a piece of Venom. Now, the last thing that Venom wanted to do was that he wanted to find Peter Parker. In Let There Be Carnage, he wanted to eat Peter Parker. In this one, he was like, we should go to New York and we should find this guy. I have a feeling that the Venom symbiote is essentially going to do that. It is going to travel to New York and find Peter Parker. And we're going to get essentially classic Venom and Carnage, where it's going to bond to Peter. He's going to go through the same motions again. He's going to realize he doesn't want the suit. He's going to do something to harm Venom really bad. The suit's going to end up on his universe's Eddie Brock, and then we're going to get traditional Venom in the MCU, which will probably spawn off into like Carnage and Toxin and all the other symbiotes in the MCU. Because since we know that from Let There Be Carnage, Venom essentially said that the symbiotes are multiversal. They all share a hive mind that connects across the multiverse. It's just that they have the ability to tune out the hive mind, so they're not connected to it. He can connect to it if he wants to, which is what he did for a fraction of a second to Eddie before they were transferred over to the main universe. I really feel as though we're going to get classic Venom, where this Venom is going to attach to Peter. It's going to realize Peter, like, hurts it. It's going to get mad, want to kill Peter, and it's going to essentially attempt to move on to the last person who actually liked it, which was Eddie Brock. But this version of Eddie Brock is more bitter and angry than main universe Eddie Brock, and then from there essentially we get classic Venom, and that's going to be wild as hell. But oh my god, I told you the spoiler talk was definitely going to be like a whole fucking hour. I wasn't fucking kidding. There is so much to talk about, and then there are so many scenes in this movie to essentially sit down and digest, and so many characters to basically sit down and go over for how amazing that they fucking did. But we are at the end of the spoiler talk, and I can't wait to throw this into the Magic Movie Fabricator and have it ask me, am I out of my fucking mind trying to render a 1 hour long movie? But we're gonna end it here before it gets over 60 minutes, because I don't feel like having to deal with that. And I will catch you in the next one. If you made it all the way to the end of this, who are you? You're insane. Thank you very much. Hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what your favorite scene is in Spider-Man No Way Home. Comment down below anything that you want clarification on, any questions that you have. I will try to get to every single person's question when I can and be super in-depth and detailed about it, because we have a ton of theory videos and character videos to make about this movie for probably the next week. Peace.